Well, nowadays you got to have that confidence because people nowadays.
Before we get straight into the podcast, I just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Declan Kirby GAA Star. Declan Kirby GAA Star Championship Journey. It's a series of GAA team children's books written by primary school teacher and GAA coach Michael Egan. You can check it out in the link in the description down below, of course, as well. Follow the trials and tribulations of Declan Kirby and his team at Smithgreen Gaelic Football Club, recently formed but promising GAA team. The book is now available in Easons and all good bookshops, so check it out in the description down below, and let's get straight into it. I suppose we'll move on to the hurling, and we'll preview obviously the hurling championship, of course, that starts this weekend as well. And I suppose we'll run through Leinster. First of all, you've Dublin versus Antrim and the winner playing Galway. I suppose we were just talking obviously about the Dubs in Gaelic football being, you know, the best team of all time, but in terms of this game, Antrim could easily cause a surprise here, and potentially they could be the ones playing Galway in a Leinster semi-final if results go their way, or if this game goes their way.
They absolutely can, and I suppose the disadvantage for Antrim, the game's not in Cork Park, is on Navan instead in County Beat, as far as I'm aware. So, look, Dublin, yeah, as you say, they're one of the best teams of all time in Gaelic football, but in hurling, I think they're a small bit inconsistent. Like in the game against Laois last year, they were absolutely unplayable. Against Kilkenny, the second half, they were unplayable. And then against Cork, they fall flat in their face. I don't know what it is about Dublin, in all honesty. They do have the players, the likes of Donald Burke, Chris Crummy. I don't know what position Matty Kenny is going to play him, centre forward. I actually think he's much more suited to being defender. They do have the players like an Owen O'Donnell full back, or even a Maria McBride, who I think is one of the most underrated players in the country, in my opinion, or Ronan Hayes, who actually stepped up in some games in the league. So, yes, they do have some smashing players, Dublin, but it's the team ethic with them. I don't know, you know more about Dublin hurling than I would, but looking at it from the outside, I think Dublin are a bit too inconsistent. I think this game against Antrim will be a very, very close game. I wouldn't be surprised if Antrim win this game. In many ways, like Antrim are actually coming in as favourites, according to some people, including myself. Like I'd actually have Antrim as favourites. You know, I might get slack for saying that in the comments section below, but I think if Keelan Malloy's on form, Neil McManus, Kieran Clark, James McNaughton, like they were against Wexford and Clare, who knows? Like Antrim could easily beat Dublin, and to be honest, whoever goes to face Galway, I think Galway will win anyway. I think Galway, in my opinion, they're one of the All Ireland favourites. I still think Limerick are a bit ahead of Galway, considering Galway showed, you know, a bit of inexperience in many ways against Tipperary in that game where they lost by 5 points. But look, I think Galway will have enough to beat Antrim or Dublin anyway and get to the Leinster final. But the advantage for Dublin and Antrim is the beauty of playing in hurling rather than football. They'll have the second chance in the hurling system because there's a qualifier system with that. So maybe Antrim can get a good draw, maybe a Clare or something, or maybe even a Laois in the next round of the qualifiers, or maybe even Dublin could get Laois and get into the next round, gain a bit of confidence, and maybe even get to an All Ireland quarterfinal. That's the huge beauty of the qualifiers. But as for the Antrim-Dublin game, I fancy Antrim could just nick it, but it honestly would be surprised if Dublin, you know, blitzed them after the season Antrim had in the league. But whoever faces Galway, I think Galway should have enough to get into that Leinster final.
Yeah, like, and I think Dublin might be the bookies' favourites, but I think a lot of people I have spoke to are fancying Antrim. Like I was speaking with Daniel Hussey last week from Tackling Sport, and I think he even said as a Dublin fan that he feels that Antrim are going to win. And, you know, it's kind of pointing towards that. Like when you think back to 2010 when they beat Dublin that time, and it was very similar in many ways, with some players like Antrim had up and coming, like, you know, Neil McManus and whatnot, and we've kind of seen now Antrim at the moment with James McNaughton coming in and Kieran Clark and a few others. So I'm personally going to stick with Dublin. I think maybe I'm going with my heart more so there, but in terms of trying to get past Galway, I think it's lights out then for the Dubs, I'm afraid. Like personally, I think that Galway are going to win the All Ireland this year. I think last year they had injuries with Cathal Mannion. I think 2019 they had injuries as well with Joe Canning. I think this year, from what I've seen so far anyway, they have a full team available. You know, Cathal Mannion's in there, Jarlath Ogmanion as well. Like, I think they're the team to beat at the moment. What do you reckon yourself?
Having looked at the games in the league, you'd think so, definitely, yeah. I think I'd rate Galway second in the country behind Limerick. I still think Limerick are gearing towards July, August. That's the main aim and always has been for John Kiley and Limerick. And they showed us against Cork, you know, they hammered us in the league that the Westmeath is irrelevant, let's be real. But looking at that Cork game, it seemed as if Limerick are back and they put out a statement saying, look, lads, we're not going away that easily after poor performances in recent games against Galway and Waterford especially. So I still think Limerick are the top dogs, but it honestly wouldn't surprise me if Galway win the All-Irelands, considering they've Cathal Mannion back, Joe Canning, they have their full team back, and they have players like Fintan Burke in the back line, Jarlath Mannion coming through, and they've Niall Burke, who I was impressed with in the league as well. So, look, I wouldn't be surprised if Galway win the All-Ireland, but I'd honestly go with Limerick's slight favourites because of the talent they have all over the pitch, the strength they have, and two young lads, especially coming in Cathal Collin and Carl O'Neill, especially, who I think are superb youngsters. And even the likes of Davy Dempsey and Adrian Breed, Pat Ryan, Peter Casey, like the bench list is absolutely endless of talent with that Limerick team. So I'd still fancy Limerick to win it, but wouldn't be surprised if Galway put up more of a challenge than last year with Cathal Mannion and Joe Canning back to full fitness.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting, all right, in particular. And I suppose with the Munster Championship, that will be another interesting one that we'll get onto in a moment. But Laois and Wexford, with the winner playing Kilkenny, I suppose, like Wexford, you'd have to fancy them beating Laois, with all due respect to Laois. Like, Wexford obviously beat them convincingly in the first day of the league, and I can't see any difference really happening here in terms of the Leinster Hurling Championship. And I suppose it would be, you know, another case of Wexford going up against Kilkenny, Davy Fitz against Brian Cody. I love it when those two play, you know, go up against each other, because they're both very passionate, and I think they're almost two different styles. It kind of reminds me of Mourinho going up against Guardiola in many ways back in the El Clasico days. But I mean, that would be an interesting one as well. But I suppose Kilkenny would probably be the favourites, you'd imagine anyway, having won the Leinster Championship last year.
I would think they'll go in as slight favourites in many ways. Lucas, I think Wexford, they have Davy Fitz as manager. Look at the talent all over the field, the likes of Conor McDonald, Lee Chin, Paul Morris. They have some superb hurlers in that team. So I wouldn't be surprised if Wexford beat Kilkenny in many ways. But then again, Kilkenny topped their league for a reason. And look, I think I'd actually go for a shock here. I'm going to go Wexford to beat Kilkenny, because the talent they have all over the field. I know they drew against Antrim, but they show the talent they have, not just in Lee Chin and Conor McDonald, but Paul Morris wing forward is absolutely outstanding. The O'Connor brothers and Jack and Rory. You have Liam McGovern, who I think turns up in big games. You have their midfield with Dermot O'Keefe there as well, and Matthew Hanlon centre back, who I think is a brilliant player. So, look, I'm going to go for shock. I think Wexford will beat Kilkenny. I think Kilkenny, there's still a bit of questions about their short passing style from the back. I think it might work against sides like Dublin or an Antrim or a Laois or a Clare, who I think are probably one of the least ranked sides in Munster in many ways. So if they come up against an informed Wexford side, because let's be honest, in the league game, Wexford were not informed. Maybe it was down to COVID cases. We don't know. It probably was. So I think Wexford will come out and shock Kilkenny, and Davy Fitz will pull off a masterclass against Brian Cody. That's my shock prediction anyway.
Yeah, that definitely is a surprise, all right, because I think definitely most people would probably have Kilkenny maybe as the favourites to potentially win that game. And I suppose, like, in terms of Kilkenny, like, would you nearly even have them as dark horses even potentially? I suppose if they're being beaten by Wexford, potentially not. But Like, because or maybe even Wexford, are they dark horses even maybe potentially for an All Ireland, maybe if they, or even winning Leinster. Obviously they'd be going up against Galway, you'd have to imagine, in that Leinster final.
It depends really on Wexford. I know I mentioned, the top quality players they have. The issue with Wexford over the years is the mentality. Once they get to the latter stages of a quarterfinal or a semi-final, you've seen it against Tipperary. They should have beaten them in 2019, in all honesty, with Tipperary getting a man sent off, Lee Chin getting the goal, and you think, surely that's it, Wexford are in the All-Ireland final. They somehow end up losing that game. And I just wonder, do Wexford have the mentality? They definitely have the players. Do they have the mentality to get over, a Tipperary or a Limerick or even a Cork and an All-Ireland semi-final? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure at all. I think these group of players have only been to one All-Ireland semi-final in their careers, never mind the last 4 or 5 years. So it's going to be a tough one for Wexford. I think they'll get to the Leinster final and they could win the All-Ireland quarter-final after losing to Galway, but after that then I think they could be a dark horse with bookies and whatnot, but as regards winning the All-Ireland, I think they're a bit off it yet. They definitely have the players, as I said, but the mentality is the issue with Wexford. As for Kilkenny, you'd think every year it's Brian Cody's last year, and yes, he comes out of nowhere. I think the guy is just going to keep going until he wins the All-Ireland. He's going to keep going until he's about 80 at this point. Let's be real. So, look, I think once Kilkenny win the All-Ireland, I think Brian Cody will probably leave then, which will be quite frustrating to some Kilkenny fans because they want to change. In fairness, they are changing tactics a small bit with their short puck passing from the back. Whether it'll work in Championship hurling, I'm not sure. It probably won't because it's a new system, etc. So I think Kilkenny are more likely to win the All-Ireland than Wexford, given Brian Cody's influence on that team and the players are willing to play from. But I don't think either of these sides are going to be up contending for All-Irelands, in all honesty. I think it's going to be probably between Tip, Galway and Limerick, in my opinion, but maybe I'll be wrong at the end of August.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting, all right, in particular, especially with Kilkenny. Like they're one county that you can never kind of rule out. I suppose under Brian Cody, because with Kilkenny in the past couple of years, like winning the Leinster Championship, the way they won it, I thought they were a beaten team. Richie Hogan comes off the bench, provides a masterclass in many ways, and Kilkenny go on to win, and even beating Limerick in 2019. I don't think it was a result that many people expected. So I would definitely have Kilkenny as potential dark horses in there, but whether they'd actually go and win an All-Ireland, I think it's very tough. You'd have to put them behind Limerick, Galway and Tipperary, and probably even Waterford as well. And speaking of Waterford, like they go up against Clare, and to be fair, you probably have to put Clare ahead of Kilkenny as well, given the recent league game. So I suppose Waterford and Clare, and the winner plays Tip. I suppose first of all, Waterford and Clare, that'll be a very intriguing game. Both played each other last year, of course, in the qualifiers as well. Who do you have going through to playing Tipperary?
It's going to be an evenly matched game because Waterford, it's going to be evenly matched. The reason is Tyke de Burke is going to be out for Waterford, which is an absolute huge loss for them. In fairness, Iarla Daly has come into the team and performed very well for them, and their whole team has stepped up as well as they can. This is going to be a very tough one to call because I think, honestly, these are probably two weakest sides in Munster. It's a very tough game to call. You have to mention it's going to be kind of a shooting match between the two superstars in Stephen Bennett and Tony Kelly. I think Tony Kelly is probably the better of the two. I think, honestly, Tony Kelly is the best player in Ireland at the moment. So I was going to say Waterford initially to win this game, but seeing as they're missing Tyke de Burke and Clare have a few scores around the team other than Kelly coming into the fray this season with Aidan McCarthy performing very well in the league, Cathal Malone performing well enough, Shane O'Donnell coming back into form in a way, Ryan Taylor's performing okay. So I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to go Clare win this game. I think whoever wins this game will lose to Tipperary anyway in the Munster semi-final because I think Tipperary are too good this season. But I think Clare will have enough to beat Waterford. I think maybe it's a bit of a hangover from the All Ireland final, but honestly, no fault of their own given Tide de Burke's injury. So I'm going to say a Clare win, but it'll be very close. It'll be a very close game on Sunday. Look, I think Clare will win this game, and I ultimately think the best player in the country, in my opinion, Tony Kelly, will be the difference between the two sides.
Yeah, I'd have to go with Clare as well. I think they've, because I think that Tony Kelly injury in a weird way might have actually helped them, because we've seen Aidan McCarthy step up, and I think Mark Rogers is another player who came into the team. So I think for Clare, like, they're definitely a team that, again, maybe a bit like a Kilkenny, a bit dark horses. Could they potentially go on a bit of a run? And I would fancy them to beat Waterford, in my opinion. I have a funny feeling they'll have the edge. And I think for Waterford, it's probably, is it a case again of second season syndrome, as they like to call it, obviously having, come so close to the All Ireland last year. And I suppose Tipperary obviously waiting, in the wings for Clare. I mean, I fancy Tipperary to go on and make the Munster final and potentially win it. So it's such a tough one to call on Munster. Like, there's so little between all the different teams. We were talking earlier about Ulster and the Ulster Senior Football Championship, and how there's very little between all those teams. You could look at this one and think, I mean, between Tipperary and obviously going up against Clare and Cork and Limerick, between those two games, I mean, it's so hard to call who potentially goes on and wins it. I mean, Limerick would be the favourites, but it's probably a lot closer than people think.
It is absolutely a lot like the Ulster Championship in many ways. Or even Kerry are coming through the ranks and performing well down through the years. So you could argue all six sides are decent sides at hurling, and you never know. Stranger things have happened. Maybe Kerry can come into the fray and challenge them, and maybe it'll take some spotlight off the footballers in many ways. It'll be brilliant as a cartman. But look, it's a tough championship for a reason. You see, Cork have improved massively this season. They were poor enough now last season, but they've bedded in the young players really well. I think Limerick might have a bit too much for them in the Munster Championship, but I think it'd be something like 2 or 3 points. I don't think it'll be a hammering, which is testament to how tough the Munster Championship actually is. Tipperary are coming now into the fray this season. Clare and Waterford, as I said, are 2 evenly matched sides. And Waterford were All Ireland finalists last year. Let's not forget that. So it is an unbelievably tough championship. All 5 sides that are in it could theoretically win the All Ireland Championship at the end of August. So it's a very tough one to call. And Limerick, as I said, would be slight favourites, maybe big favourites, given how they dispatched the teams last year and how they dispatched Cork in the league. So, but I fancy Tipperary to win it overall. But honestly, it's like the Ulster Championship in the way it's going to be so close right up to the last whistle.
Yeah, it's going to be very close, I think, between the different counties. And I suppose in terms of Limerick and Cork, I mean, that's an intriguing battle. And I'm going to be honest, I've given a prediction that Cork are going to beat Limerick. I have a sneaky feeling you're going to turn them over. I just think with Limerick, they're going to go through the qualifiers. They're probably going to build maybe in the same way that they've done in 2018. And I don't think they're just quite there yet. I can see John Coyley tweaking the team a little bit, trying a few different things out. I don't know if they're quite at the same level that they were at the end of last year. Still wouldn't surprise me if they won this game and won every game and won the All-Ireland the way they did. But what do you think? Can the Rebels pull off a surprise? I suppose you have beaten them in the Munster Championship in recent years as well. I think you beat them in 2019 in the round robin. So you actually don't have a bad record against them in the Championship in recent years.
You absolutely don't have a bad record. Like the last 3 meetings against Limerick in the Championship, we did lose to them technically. Like in the All-Ireland semi-final, you might argue, yeah, Cork lost again, but we only lost it after extra time, and Cork were the much better side throughout the 70 minutes and then got pipped at the last 7. So we do have an excellent record against Limerick compared to other counties around the country, for example. Of course we could beat Limerick. I would be confident as a Cork fan. Like, the confidence is skyrocketing with the young players coming through, and we're now building a team. The spine is huge for us. The likes of Mark Coleman, Dara Fitzgibbon, Patrick Horgan, Jack O'Connor, I think, has been absolutely excellent throughout the league campaign as well. Luke Mead is doing well as well in the league campaign. So we're not a bad team or anything. We're actually all Ireland contenders when you look at our team throughout the league campaign. But I just fear Limerick are coming into their prime about July time. And that is the worry for us. If Limerick hit top form, there's no going back. Cork will get as close to a slaughtering as it can be. Like, if Cork even put up a miraculous performance, the game could even end up as a 4 or 5 point game. So I still think Limerick will have too much for us, but it will be a very close game to call. I will be confident going in as a Cork fan, but given the performance of our players in the league campaign, the team we put out, the young players we're betting in, but the thing is, the other side of that, Limerick have such brilliant players. They have strong players in every position. Their wing forwards are nearly all over 6 foot. It's absolutely incredible. They're incredible shape. And I can't see anything other than Limerick win. Maybe Cork hurlers can prove me wrong, but Limerick are just too good. I think Cork will build through momentum in the qualifiers. We have the potential to do that, and maybe even another semi-final appearance if we're lucky. But I still see a Limerick Tipperary final this season, and Limerick going on eventually to win the All Ireland yet again.
Yeah, I suppose because Limerick, like physically, when you look at the team, like when you look at the the height of them and the amount of work they do, and they're such a strong physical team, as everyone very well knows, and I think it's one of their best attributes, especially when you look at the condition of even someone like Garrod Hegarty, for example. I mean, he looks like a monstrous of a man. He really, really does. Like, and I suppose in terms of the Munster final then itself, if you had Limerick and Tipperary or Clare in the final, would you back Limerick to make it 3 Munsters in a row? I actually can't remember the last county who won 3 Munster titles in a row. Might have even been Cork or potentially even Tipperary. But I suppose, could Limerick get the job done, make it 3 Munsters in a row?
I think they absolutely can. It was actually most recently, I think, Tipperary actually did 3 in a row when they had the likes of Lark Corbett, Paddy Maher, and Liam Sheedy managing them then after Eamon Ryan, etc. So I think they won 4 in a row, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. So it has been done before, and Limerick have a superb outfit. The thing for Limerick, I think, is to regain that All Ireland title. Like, they haven't ever done back-to-back in their history. They're on the cusp of writing themselves into the GAA history books. And this team with Garrod Hegarty, Tom Morrissey, Cian Lynch, William O'Donoghue, on top form, this team could blitz anybody in the country. I think the only thing they couldn't really blitz is Galway, because I think Galway have the players to deal with Limerick. But I think Limerick will win this game, but don't be surprised if Tipperary win it. I just think Tipperary tried out too much of the older players. I think Paddy Maher, Brendan Maher, don't get me wrong, they're unbelievable players on their day, and they were unbelievable in the league in some games throughout the league. But I would have liked to see the likes of Owen Connolly, Andy Ormond. I think only Jake Morris really got sufficient game time for Tipperary, which would probably be a disadvantage for them. In the long run, they have to play younger players eventually once the likes of Paddy Maher, Brendan Maher, etc. retire. Shamey Cannon as well. So that'll be a disadvantage. I think they'll do well this year, but going down the line in future years, that'll be a worry for Liam Sheedy's men, not playing the younger players like an Andy Ormond, for example. So I still think Limerick will win Munster. I think the other final will eventually be Galway Limerick, and Limerick will win us by about a point or 2, but it'll be a very close game. But as for Munster, I think they'll win it, but wouldn't be surprised if Tipperary pull off a shocker.
Yeah. Like I suppose with Tipperary in general, like it is an interesting one, the way they've kind of been so loyal. I suppose Liam Sheedy's been very loyal to the likes of Noel and John McGrath, and even some of the the other players in there like Shamey Callan. I mean, obviously they're the players who won them the All Ireland in 2019, so you can understand why, and even going back, previous years as well. But yeah, like I suppose it is interesting that they're not maybe given as much of the young players time as we would have all expected. But I suppose in terms of like obviously there's qualifiers and hurling, and that's obviously a great thing. We wish there was qualifiers in football as well. But is there any counties in there that you even think could go on a bit of a run in the qualifiers? Maybe like a county that maybe gets knocked out, maybe even someone like an Antrim or like a Dark Horse or surprise package or anything like that.
I think Antrim are the obvious pick. If they get a lucky draw in the first round against Laois to build momentum, then they could go through. And it honestly wouldn't surprise me if they beat someone like a Waterford or Clare or even a Cork on their day. I know Cork have performed well in the league, but looking at Antrim performing so well against the likes of Wexford and Clare, it honestly wouldn't shock me if they beat Cork. That's no downgrading sentence to Cork in many ways. Cork have improved very well, but it's more testament to how Antrim have improved under Dan Gleeson. They've been absolutely outstanding with the likes of Keelan Malloy in midfield, James McNaughton, who could drop there, Neil McManus, who've been absolutely outstanding in the league. And the one thing that would worry me about Antrim, a bit like Derry in football, maybe they're peaking a bit too soon. Like you look at Derry in football throughout the years in the league, like in 2014 is a main example. They put it up to Dublin Division 1 final in Croke Park, and then they lose to Longford in the championship. Maybe the same could happen to Antrim, and it'll be a bit of hard work undone, but it really shouldn't be, because the season Antrim have had, picking up 5 points in the league campaign for a side that just won the Joe McDonagh Cup, that just got promoted in hurling, is an absolutely brilliant achievement, and Antrim should be remembered for that, and not so much if they get a hiding off of someone like a Cork or Kilkenny in the qualifiers. That shouldn't be how Antrim are remembered. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if they beat someone like a Waterford or even a Kilkenny. They were close against Kilkenny in Nolan Park. Few referee decisions, and Antrim were tired of the way. So, yeah, I think Antrim, maybe Dublin, if they get their team in order, if they put Chris Crummy in his rightful position and Donald Burke hits form, and the older players, Danny Sutcliffe and Liam Rush, add a bit of something into their team. So, look, I think you'd be looking towards Dublin and Antrim as dark horses. I think Laois are a bit past it now, unfortunately for Cheddar Plunkett, but I think Dublin and Antrim, you'd be looking as dark horses, most notably Antrim.
Yeah, I think Antrim are definitely the team on most people's lips anyways, the potential side to go on a bit of a run. And I suppose in terms of the All Ireland then, as I said before, I feel Galway are going to be good enough to beat Limerick this year. I think they certainly have the talent to do it with the likes of Cathal Mannion coming into the team. I think they're physically the closest team to Limerick. I think when you look at both teams going up against each other, I think physically Galway are up there. I think they can compete with Limerick for the full 70 minutes, which, you know, you've seen with the likes of Waterford, and I suppose, you know, even think back to when they played Tipperary in that 2019 Munster final. So it's interesting. It really, really is. It's going to be a close one, but ultimately you fancy Limerick anyways, just about to pip Galway and obviously get the edge. And I suppose Lee McCarthy staying in Limerick.
Yeah. Again, another boring pick in many ways, but you see Limerick last year in the All Ireland final, the way they swatted Waterford aside. I think, look, I think it'll be a point or two against Galway, but the thing that's most notable about this All Ireland, like, it wasn't really that special last year. It's going to be special this year because, as I've said already, Limerick have never done a back-to-back. This is a chance for these Limerick players to put themselves in the history books in years gone by, and these players will be absolutely legends if they win the All Ireland. The likes of Garrow Hagerty, Tom Morrissey, Cade Lynch will be remembered for years to come, 20 years down the line. Something like the Kilkenny lads, like the likes of Henry Shefflin, Eddie Brennan, Mick Fenley down through the years. So, look, history's on the line for Limerick, and I think they'll rise to the pressure and win this All Ireland. But I agree with you in Galway. I think if Cathal Mannion and Joe Canning and most of their teams stay fit, Dahi Burke's another huge player at full back, Galway could easily win it against Limerick. But I just think there's so much pressure for this Limerick team with John Kiley in charge on the line. I think that'll be enough to win them their second Liam McCarthy in a row, their third Liam McCarthy in 4 years, which would be an absolutely incredible record and will be remembered in years to come.
Yeah, and I think with Limerick, it reminds me a bit of when Dublin won back-to-backs there, I think after. So they won obviously 2015 and then 2016. And obviously have gone on to win every year since. But I remember when Dublin did win that All Ireland in 2016, I think it was the first time since the 70s that Dublin had put back-to-back All-Ireland wins together, and it definitely meant a huge thing at the time. And I think I remember it was a big deal about it when Dublin beat Mayo eventually in that 2016 All-Ireland final. So it could be a similar case for Limerick. It could very much be an interesting one, and ultimately, you know, between them and Galway, I think they're definitely the two closest at the moment. And I think there's, you know, Tipperary potentially, maybe, like they were champions 2 years ago, maybe underdogs, and you can never really rule out a side like Kilkenny or a Clare in there. And I think hurling's going to be very, very interesting, I think, this year. Hurler of the Year and Footballer of the Year, what two players would stand out, I suppose, in terms of your picks there?
Hurler of the Year, I probably go... this is a tough one now. Considering Garrod Hegarty got last year, I think Tom Morrissey will be banging on to get this award this season. Considering if Garrod Hegarty wasn't there, everybody will be talking about Tom Morrissey. So I'm going to go for a bit of an obscure pick in many ways, but I'm going to go Tom Morrissey as Hurler of the Year. Footballer of the Year, even as a Corkman, I'd have to pick David Clifford. Even, you know, Dublin, I think, will still win the All-Ireland. But I think David Clifford, this is his time now to shine. He's the Messi of Gaelic football. He's the golden boy. He will win this Footballer of the Year. And if he has games like he did against Galway, where he was absolutely unplayable, he's going to win it. He's going to win it. And I'd actually back someone like a Dublin player that might turn heads a small bit. Paddy Small, I think he was impressive at the league campaign. He might be up there for Footballer of the Year. Even Doyle Scully, who's beginning to get more notice this year. But overall, I'd have to go David Clifford, even as Cartman. I cannot deny his skill and his influence on that Kerry team. So I'm going to go David Clifford and Tom Morrissey as Players of the Year.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I've gone for Brian Concannon of Galway in terms of Hurler of the Year. I think he's improved immensely ever since he's come into the team. Last year, obviously, he got a goal, I remember, against Kilkenny, a very well taken goal. And I think he's been arguably Hurler of the Year in the league so far. So he's certainly coming in with a lot of momentum, and he's the one I've gone for there. But yeah, look, listen, anyway, cheers, Matthew, for your time, for running through the football and the hurling. And yeah, I'll link down your podcast down below for anyone to check it out.
Thanks for having me on, Aaron. And I wanted to congratulate you. I did past videos and reaching 1K subs. It's an absolutely brilliant achievement and great for your channel, I'd imagine, as well. So thanks for having me on again, and well done on the 1K subs. Truly deserve it, man.
Yeah, no bother, Matthew. I appreciate it very much.